Rich woman loses everything and must do the unthinkable to survive. Her journey teaches her the true value of life. Eloise Hawthorne woke up to the soft sound of waves crashing against the shore. The sun poured through the large windows of her luxurious Malibu home, painting the room in golden hues. She stretched her arms, feeling the warmth on her skin, and took a deep breath, savoring the scent of ocean air mixed with the faint aroma of fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. Little did she know, this perfect morning would soon be shattered. As she sipped her coffee, Eloise glanced at her phone, scrolling through the usual social media posts. But then, a headline caught her eye. Major scandal rocks Hawthorne Enterprises. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly tapped the news link, her eyes scanning the words. The article detailed accusations of fraud against her family's company. Panic gripped her. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, her hands trembling as she set down the cup. Minutes later, Eloise's world began to crumble. The doorbell rang, and she opened it to find a stern-looking man in a suit. "Ms. Hawthorne, you need to vacate the premises immediately," he said, his voice cold and unyielding. "You've been evicted." Eloise's heart raced. "Evicted? But I need time. I can fix this," she pleaded, desperation lacing her words. He shook his head, offering no comfort. "You have until the end of the day." In a daze, Eloise stumbled back inside. Her mind whirled with disbelief. Friends she thought would stand by her side suddenly seemed to vanish, their texts unanswered, their calls silent. "Where are you all?" she cried out, her voice echoing against the empty walls of her once bustling home. The laughter and warmth that filled her life just hours ago felt like a distant memory. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Eloise packed her belongings in a frenzy, tears streaming down her face. "What am I going to do?" she thought, feeling a weight of shame and confusion. The life she knew was slipping away, and with it, her sense of self. Finally, she stepped outside, the cool evening air hitting her like a cold slap. She felt exposed and vulnerable, like a bird whose nest had been destroyed. The familiar streets of Malibu now felt foreign, filled with strangers who had no idea of her fall from grace. "How did I let it get this far?" she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. With nowhere to go, Eloise wandered aimlessly, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see the beach ahead, the waves crashing with a relentless force. "Maybe I can find some peace there," she thought, longing for a moment of clarity. But as she walked, she felt the weight of her new reality bearing down on her. No more lavish dinners, no more designer clothes, no more friends to lean on. She was utterly alone. In that moment of despair, a question gnawed at her. Who am I without all of this? The thought sent shivers down her spine. The woman who once flaunted her wealth and status was now a stranger to herself. She needed to navigate this new world without the privileges she had taken for granted, but how could she? Suddenly, a loud honk pulled her from her thoughts. A car zoomed past, splashing water from a nearby puddle onto her shoes. She looked down, realizing how out of place she felt in her once stylish attire, now soiled and irrelevant. "I have to find a way to survive," she resolved, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Eloise took a deep breath and walked toward the unfamiliar streets, each step echoing the uncertainty of her future. What would happen next? Would she find a way to rebuild her life? The answers felt just out of reach, but the flicker of hope ignited within her. She had to keep moving forward, even if the path ahead was clouded with doubt. Eloise stood outside the rundown motel, her heart heavy with uncertainty. The neon sign flickered dimly, casting a sickly glow on the cracked pavement. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was her new home, at least for now. The air felt thick with the scent of stale cigarettes and cheap perfume. She pushed the door open and stepped inside, the bell above it chiming with an almost mocking glee. The lobby was small and cluttered, filled with mismatched furniture and faded posters. Behind the desk, a weary-looking man glanced up from his phone. "Welcome," he said, his voice flat. "What can I do for you?" Eloise swallowed hard. "I need a room, please." He typed something into the computer. "One night or more?" I guess more," she replied, unsure how long she would be here. "For a week, maybe?" "That'll be $350 up front," he said, not looking her in the eye. Eloise fished through her purse, her hands shaking as she counted the money she had left. After a moment, she handed over the cash, feeling a pang of loss as she did. The man handed her a key, and she took it, her fingers brushing against the cold metal. The room was small and dimly lit, with peeling wallpaper and a musty smell. It had a bed, a small table, and a television that looked like it had seen better days. She dropped her bag on the bed and sat down, staring at the wall. The loneliness wrapped around her like a heavy blanket, suffocating and real. As the night wore on, Eloise tried to distract herself by scrolling through her phone. But every notification was a reminder of what she had lost. Her friends' names were replaced with cold silence, and she felt the weight of their absence. She tossed her phone aside, frustration boiling inside her. Just then, there was a soft knock at her door. Hesitant, she opened it to find a woman standing there, her hair pulled back in a messy bun and a baby in her arms. "Hi, I'm Samira," she said, a warm smile breaking through the tiredness on her face. "I live in the room next to yours. I thought I'd come introduce myself." Eloise managed a smile. "Hi, I'm Eloise." "Nice to meet you," Samira said, shifting the baby to her hip. "Is this your first time here?" "Yeah," Eloise replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just needed a place to stay." Samira nodded, her expression understanding. "It can be tough. This place isn't much, but it's home for a lot of us." She looked down at her baby. "I work at the diner down the road. If you need anything, just knock." "Thanks. I appreciate that," Eloise said, feeling a flicker of warmth in her chest. "Do you have any plans for tomorrow?" Samira asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. "I'm not sure," Eloise admitted. "I guess I'll just figure it out as I go." "Well, if you're looking for work, the diner is always hiring," Samira suggested. "It's hard work, but the people are great, and you get to meet some interesting folks." Eloise hesitated. The thought of working felt daunting. "I haven't worked in a while," she confessed. "I don't know if I can do it." "You can," Samira replied, her voice firm, yet encouraging. "Everyone has to start somewhere. Besides, it might help you feel better too." Eloise nodded, considering the idea. Samira's confidence was infectious, and for the first time since her fall from grace, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Okay," Eloise said, a small smile creeping onto her lips. "Maybe I will check it out." "Good choice," Samira said, her smile widening. "If you need a ride, I can help you out. Just let me know." As they talked, Eloise began to see the resilience in Samira's eyes. This woman was a single mother, juggling life with a smile. Eloise felt a connection forming, a small thread of friendship weaving into her lonely existence. "Thanks for stopping by," Eloise said, feeling lighter. "Anytime," Samira replied, glancing at the baby. "I've got to get her to bed, but remember, you're not alone here." As Samira walked away, Eloise closed the door and leaned against it, the heaviness of her situation still present, but now accompanied by a sense of possibility. Maybe she could adapt. Maybe there was a way to find herself again in this unfamiliar world. Eloise stood behind the counter of the small diner, the smell of greasy food filling the air. Her hands trembled slightly as she took an order from a gruff-looking man. This was her first week as a waitress, and every day felt like a test. She had never worked a day in her life. The thought made her stomach knot. "2 eggs, sunny side up," the man said, his voice deep and impatient. Eloise nodded, her pen moving swiftly over the notepad. "Coming right up," she replied, trying to sound confident. As she moved to the kitchen, She glanced around the diner. It was filled with regulars, people who looked worn but familiar with the daily grind. Samira, her new friend from the motel, was busy serving another table. Eloise admired the way Samira carried herself, her smile bright even when she was exhausted. "You're doing great, Eloise," Samira said as she passed by, sensing Eloise's uncertainty. "Just take it one order at a time." Eloise took a deep breath. She was learning the value of hard work, but it was not easy. The tips were small, and at the end of each shift, she felt the weight of her earnings pressing down on her. She had to budget every dollar, something she had never considered before. Later that day, a co-worker named Lisa approached her. Lisa looked worried, her brow furrowed as she leaned closer. "Eloise, can I ask you for a favor?" Eloise hesitated. She was still trying to figure out how to survive on her own. "What do you need?" "I'm short on rent this month. If you could lend me $20, I promise to pay you back next week," Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. Eloise's mind raced. She had only $25 left until her next paycheck. Helping Lisa would mean she might not have enough for her own needs, but something in Lisa's eyes made her heart ache. I don't know," Eloise started, but Lisa interrupted. "Please, I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I have kids to feed," Lisa pleaded. Eloise felt the weight of the choice pressing down on her. Would helping Lisa mean risking her own safety? But the thought of a mother struggling made her stomach twist. "Okay," she finally said, handing over the cash. "Just promise you'll pay me back." Lisa's face lit up with relief. "Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." As Lisa walked away, Eloise felt a mix of shame and pride. She had helped someone, but at what cost? The internal conflict gnawed at her. She reflected on her past and how she had never had to worry about money. Now, she was facing tough decisions, each one revealing more about her character. That night, back in her motel room, Eloise lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her old life, her fancy home, her designer clothes, her friends who had vanished. A tear slipped down her cheek. "What have I done?" she whispered to herself. This new life was challenging, and every day felt like a battle. The next morning, she met Samira outside the diner. Samira had an infectious energy that always made Eloise smile. "Hey, are you okay? You looked a bit off yesterday," Samira asked, concern in her eyes. "I made a choice. I gave Lisa $20, and I'm not sure if it was the right thing to do," Eloise admitted, her voice shaky. Samira nodded, understanding. "It's hard to navigate this world, but remember, kindness matters. You did what you thought was right." Eloise took a deep breath, grateful for Samira's support. "I just feel so lost sometimes." "Me too," Samira replied. "But we have to keep moving forward. There's strength in what we're doing. Every small act counts." Eloise felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she could find her way in this new life. She was learning to face her fears and insecurities, and while it was painful, it was also a path toward understanding herself. As she stepped back into the diner, ready for another day, Eloise realized that each choice she made would shape her future. The struggle for survival was teaching her lessons she never expected to learn, and for the first time, she felt a sense of purpose beginning to grow within her. Eloise sat on the edge of her bed in the motel room, her heart racing as she read the latest headline on her phone. The screen glowed with the words, "Former CEO Eloise Hawthorne's Fall from Grace, a Cautionary Tale." Her stomach churned as she felt the weight of the betrayal from someone she once called a friend. How could Jenna do this to her? The article detailed her financial downfall, painting her as a reckless figure in a world of wealth and privilege. "This is not who I am anymore," Eloise whispered to herself, her voice shaky. She felt exposed, her past laid bare for all to see. The humiliation stung like 1,000 needles, and she could almost hear the whispers of judgment from those around her. With a deep breath, Eloise put the phone down. Just then, a soft knock came at the door. It was Samira, her new friend from the diner. "Hey, you okay?" Samira asked, peeking inside. She had a look of concern on her face, and Eloise felt grateful for her presence. No, Eloise admitted, her voice cracking. I just saw something about me online. Samira stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Let me guess, it's about your old life? Eloise nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Jenna wrote about my past. It's all out there. I feel so betrayed. People can be cruel, Samira said, her tone gentle yet firm. But you know what? You are not that person anymore. You have changed. Eloise shook her head. It doesn't feel like it. I'm still the same person inside, but now everyone sees me as a failure. No one knows the whole story, Samira replied, sitting down beside Eloise. They only see what they want to see. You've been through so much, and you're still standing. That says a lot about you. Eloise felt a small spark of hope ignite within her. But how do I move on from this? How do I regain my dignity? By being true to yourself, Samira said, her eyes shining with determination. Don't let their words define you. You have the power to write your own story now. Eloise took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of Samira's words wrap around her like a comforting blanket. You're right. I can't let this bring me down. I need to rise above it. Exactly, Samira encouraged. Let this be your motivation. Show them that you are more than what they think. With newfound resolve, Eloise wiped her tears and straightened her back. I will not let this define me. I will prove to myself that I can do better. Good. We can tackle this together, Samira said, smiling. Let's start by focusing on today. You have a shift at the diner soon, and you can show those customers just how strong you are. Eloise smiled for the first time that day. Thank you, Samira. I don't know what I would do without you. Just remember, we all face challenges. You're not alone in this, Samira replied, standing up. Now let's get to work. We have people to serve and lives to change. As they walked out of the motel room, Eloise felt a flicker of determination in her heart. She was ready to face the world, ready to turn this betrayal into a stepping stone for her future. No longer would she be a victim of her past. She would rise from the ashes and redefine herself. The two friends made their way to the diner, where the smell of coffee and breakfast wafted through the air. Eloise took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her emotions lift just a little. Let's show them what we're made of, she said, her voice steady. Together, Samira replied, her smile brightening the room. And as they stepped into the diner, Eloise knew that this was just the beginning of her journey, a journey of resilience, strength, and unyielding hope. Eloise sat on the edge of her bed in the motel, staring out the window at the faded neon sign of the diner across the street. The bright colors seemed to mock her, but there was something comforting about the constant hum of life outside. She took a deep breath, trying to gather her thoughts. The weight of loneliness had started to lift ever so slightly as she began to connect with the people around her. That evening, she decided to join a small gathering of motel residents in the parking lot. They had set up a grill and were sharing food. Eloise hesitated for a moment, but the warm laughter and the smell of grilled burgers pulled her in. She walked over, her heart racing with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Hey there! You're Eloise, right? A cheerful voice called out. It was a young man with tousled hair and a bright smile. I'm Jake. Welcome to our little barbecue. Thanks, Jake, Eloise replied, her voice soft. I just thought I'd come join you all. As she took a plate filled with food, she noticed a woman sitting nearby, looking a bit shy. Eloise smiled at her. Hi, I'm Eloise. What's your name? I'm Lila, the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been living here for a few months now. Eloise could see the tiredness in Lila's eyes, but there was also a flicker of hope. What brought you here? Eloise asked gently. Lila looked down at her plate. I lost my job and couldn't pay rent. I thought I'd be here for a short time, but... She trailed off, a hint of sadness in her voice. Eloise felt a pang of understanding. I know how that feels. I was just at a different place in my life. It's hard to adjust." Lila looked up, surprised. "Really? I thought you seemed so put together." Eloise chuckled softly. "I'm definitely not put together. I'm just trying to find my way, like everyone else here." As the evening went on, Eloise shared her story, and the more she spoke, the more comfortable she felt. The laughter and stories from the others filled the air, and she began to see the strength in their connections. Samira joined them, bringing a tray of homemade desserts. "Who wants some sweet potato pie?" she announced, her eyes sparkling with joy. Eloise raised her hand eagerly. "Me! I've never had sweet potato pie before." "You're in for a treat," Samira laughed, handing her a slice. "It's my favorite recipe from my grandmother." As they ate, Eloise listened to their stories, each one a testament to resilience and hope. Jake had once been a musician, trying to make it big in the city. Lila had dreams of opening her own art studio. Samira shared tales of her struggles as a single mother, working multiple jobs to provide for her child. "Eloise, you've got to see our community garden," Samira said, her eyes lighting up. "We're all working on it together. It's a way to grow our own food and help each other." Eloise felt a spark of excitement. "That sounds amazing. I'd love to help with that." "Great. We can use all the hands we can get," Samira replied. "It's not just about the food. It's about coming together and supporting one another." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Eloise felt a warmth spreading through her. For the first time since her fall from grace, she felt a sense of belonging. She realized that these small moments of connection were what she had been missing. Later that night, after the barbecue wrapped up, Eloise sat on her bed, reflecting on the evening. She picked up her phone and texted Samira, "Thank you for tonight. I really needed that." A moment later, her phone buzzed with a reply. "Glad you could join us. Remember, we're all in this together. Let's build something beautiful." Eloise smiled, her heart lighter. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but with these new connections, she felt ready to face whatever came next. The community was becoming her lifeline, and she was determined to contribute, to give back, and to find her place among them. Eloise sat on the edge of her bed in the small motel room, her heart racing as she faced a crucial choice. The walls around her felt closer than ever, filled with memories of her past life, but also with hopes for a future she had started to imagine. The noise of the diner next door buzzed in her ears, a constant reminder of the people she had come to care for. "What's it going to be?" she whispered to herself, the question echoing in her mind. The thought of returning to her old life, with its comforts and status, teased her. Yet, the idea of leaving behind the new community she had found filled her with dread. She thought of Samira, who worked tirelessly to provide for her daughter, and the other motel residents who had shared their stories with her. They had opened her eyes to a world she had never truly seen before, one filled with struggle, but also with strength. That evening, Eloise walked into the diner where she had been working for the past few weeks. The smell of coffee and fried food filled the air, a strange comfort amidst the chaos of her life. Samira was at the counter, flipping pancakes with a practiced ease. She looked up, her face breaking into a warm smile when she saw Eloise. "Hey you ready for another busy night?" Samira asked, her voice bright, despite the tiredness in her eyes. Eloise nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. "Samira, can I talk to you for a minute?" she said, glancing around to ensure they had a moment alone. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Samira wiped her hands on her apron and stepped closer. Eloise took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do. I can go back to my old life, but I don't think I want to. I feel like I've found something here, something important." Samira's expression softened, and she leaned in. "You've changed, Eloise. You're not the same person who walked in here weeks ago. You've grown." "I feel it too," Eloise said, her voice trembling slightly. "I've realized that the wealth I had didn't mean anything compared to the connection I have with you and the others. I want to stay and help. I want to be part of this community." A smile broke across Samira's face, her eyes shining with pride. You don't know how much that means to me. We need more people like you, who care and want to uplift others. It's not an easy life, but together, we can make it better. Eloise felt a wave of relief wash over her. I want to work more shifts here. I want to help with whatever you need. That's great. We can use the extra hands, especially during the rush hours, Samira replied, her excitement palpable. But you know it won't be easy, right? It's hard work. I'm ready for it, Eloise said, her voice steady. I've learned so much already. I want to be part of this family. As they talked, the diner filled with customers, laughter, and the clattering of dishes. Eloise felt a warmth in her heart as she looked around, seeing the faces of people who had welcomed her into their lives. It was different from her past, but it was real, and it was beautiful. Later that night, after the last customer had left and the diner was quiet, Eloise helped Samira clean up. They worked side by side, sharing stories and laughter, the bond between them growing stronger. Thank you for believing in me, Eloise said quietly as she wiped down the counter. I always believed you had it in you, Samira replied, her tone sincere. You just needed to find your way. Eloise smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle in her heart. She had made her decision. She would stay and help, support her new friends, and embrace the life she had found. The journey ahead might be challenging, but she felt ready to face it, no longer burdened by the weight of her past. As she closed her eyes that night, she thought of the days to come, filled with hope and purpose.